Yeah, it's interesting. Momentum, as like this energy that kind of sweeps through, it can be really, really wonderful, and it can be really, really daunting and mysterious. And there are times when I've gotten on that wave and really rode it, and other times when the wave kind of rode me.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Paul Fugelsang, a private practice entrepreneur in Asheville, North Carolina, as well as the founder of Open Path Psychotherapy Collective and the therapy directory Being Seen. Listen as we talk about seeking balance, giving back, and finding the energy to do great work. Paul, welcome to Therapist Clubhouse. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I wanted to ask you about your entrepreneurial journey. And I'm really curious about a few things. I wanted to say you've got a lot going on. So you have a private practice in Asheville, North Carolina. You have Open Path Psychotherapy Collective, and now you're launching Being Seen. Looking at all of that, has there been a decision that you can think of that affected your entrepreneurial journey in a big way?
A decision in terms of what led me here?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good question. When I think back to how I was as a child, it makes sense that this is what I ended up doing as an adult. As a kid, I think I was always interested in creating businesses and starting businesses and having odd jobs here and there. I think by the time I turned 16, I probably had about 4 or 5 different jobs that I had worked. And it was just exciting for me to figure out how I could not only make money, that was part of it, but so much of it was how I could engage my creative mind and build something from nothing. And I suppose that when I entered my 20s and early 30s, I moved away from that in certain respects, and I really dedicated myself to becoming a therapist. And then after I launched my practice, that something awoke in me, and that thing that I had as a kid really came back to the fore. And since then, I've really enjoyed, in ways that are surprising to me, actually, but I've really enjoyed the creativity behind building these businesses and seeing what happens with them. It's all very exciting, and it's always a mystery.
It is. It's really, it can be so fun and interesting and engaging. I was just I was beginning to create a new website yesterday, and just getting that rush of, anticipating communicating with people through this website and thinking about, the need that I'm filling. And it seems like that's just really exciting for you too.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's something about there being nothing and then there being something, and then that something is actually serving a purpose that can help others in some way. That feels really gratifying to me.
So when you started your private practice, what was your vision then? Who did you want to see?
So after I started my practice, I was working with kids and adults and couples, and more and more I felt like I wanted to specialize on working with adults and couples. So I shifted my attention there, and I did my graduate work at Naropa University in Boulder, which is a Buddhist school. So more and more I found myself integrating the contemplative psychotherapy training that I had received at Naropa with somatic therapy and working with people who have complex trauma or people who are suffering deeply from depression and anxiety.
Was Naropa wonderful?
Wonderful is not the word I would use to describe Naropa. My experience at Naropa, it's an amazing place.
Yeah.
I found it to be a very, very difficult experience. So the way that my program works, the program that I did was they throw everyone into this pot, and you only take classes with your cohort, and nobody else comes in to your classes. So essentially they create this really large family system that includes 2 30-day meditation retreats a year. And I think they've changed that now, that format, since I was there. But anyway, everyone starts acting all of their stuff out onto each other, and it gets really intense really quickly. There's a lot of group therapy involved in it, and a lot of processing, and it was very, very intense, very, very challenging experience. it helped me learn to know myself in ways that I never thought imaginable,
Ah.
and in ways that really I feel like I'm still integrating and learning about years and years later.
Oh, wow. 2 30-day retreats a year.
Well, so the way it worked was it's a 3-year program. The
Yeah.
first 2 years, you do a 30-day retreat each year.
Oh, each
and then
year.
the third year, it was, I think, an 8-day retreat.
Okay. Still, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot of sitting meditation.
And was there, so then you had your private practice, you're working with adults, you're working with couples and individuals. And then what happened that made you realize, was there a moment when you realized that you wanted to or needed to open up Open Path?
I think there were a few moments, like most people, I got to this place where suddenly my practice was cooking, and I wasn't worried about filling up slots anymore. And because I believed that ethically I should take a few people at a low fee, I was doing that. And then, I'd receive a phone call from someone who was looking for help. And oftentimes there was no place where I could refer them. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't have enough money or if they were underinsured. This was before the Affordable Care Act went into effect. And at that point, there were still a lot of people who were uninsured or underinsured, a lot more than there are today. So it got my wheels turning.
And so then that really makes sense. So then Open Path gives a way for you to be able to tap right into who's willing to offer some low fee slots, and many of them probably very experienced therapists.
Exactly. The way I figured it is that most of us were offering lower fee slots anyway. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, with Open Path, what we can do a few things. We can encourage therapists to go lower than they normally go with their sliding scale. So if their sliding scale is between 60 and 80 a session, we'd really ask them to go between 30 and 50 a session. I also figured that since most of us do this, and we're acting as very lone practitioners when we do this, that if we created a website where we were all doing this under the same roof, then it adds meaning to what the work that we're doing and the service that we're offering. So now the fact that I'm offering somebody low-fee therapy in my office in Asheville means that somebody in Miami can also get low-fee therapy, which means that somebody in San Francisco can also find and receive lower-fee therapy. So the idea of creating a collective out of this took hold in my mind, and it just made sense.
It's really, there's something that I've been encouraging people to do for a long time is instead of having, and I promise this is related to what you just said, instead of having a sliding scale where people kind of lower their fee just a little bit, and maybe like let's say someone's charging $150 and then they lower their fee to $100 for some people. I've been really encouraging people, don't do that. Like charge a really substantial fee, charge what you need to charge to support yourself, and then slide really low for a few people. Because for someone who can't afford $150, it's also really likely that $100 is very unaffordable. And so I love that you're saying 30 to 50, that it's not just lower your fee a little bit, but do make a significant shift for a few slots, for as many slots as feels comfortable.
That's exactly the way I see it. And most of the therapists in the collective, we have over 3,000 people signed up now around the country. Most people see 1 or 2 clients. Mm-hmm. Then they change their profile to say not accepting new Open Path clients. And that effectively buries their profile so they don't come up in searches. And it really seems to me that asking people to go much lower only for 1 or 2 clients, it makes a lot of sense. And I don't take it for granted either what we're asking of therapists. I know that a lot of us are not making a ton of money, and I know that cost of living is high, and we have to pay for our own insurance as well. So the therapists in our collective who are doing this work are really, really giving, and it's quite impressive. We've connected over 7,000 people. We anticipate at some point later in this year we'll connect our 10,000th client to affordable care, and it really is thanks to a lot of different people around this country doing really, really important work.
So how does the model work for Open Path? How do clients access these lower fee services?
Sure. So first for therapists, we don't charge anything for therapists to join. They're already giving by seeing clients at a low rate. So there's no fee at all to sign up with us and advertise on our site. We also offer a whole bevy of incentives with companies around the country that work with therapists in private practice. People like psychotherapy.net and Psychotherapy Networker and the Gottman Institute. They'll give discounts and in many cases free offerings from their services to our therapists. So there's no fee at all for therapists. Then on the client end of things, when a client signs up, we ask them to pay a one-time lifetime membership fee of $50. And this helps support our organization as a nonprofit. And then from there, after they pay that fee, they can see anybody in our network for those rates that range between $30 and $50 a session. They go to the site, they do a search, they find the therapist they want to work with. They pay the fee, they let us know, and then we connect the therapist and the client via an email, and then we remove ourselves completely from the relationship. We never check back in. We never ask the therapist to do any sort of reporting. At that point, we're done.
That's so great. That's a lot less paperwork than you could have created for everybody.
Oh, yeah, there's very little paperwork. I'm no fan of paperwork.
No. And so then you have been launching this new thing, Being Seen. And so how did you know it was time for that? And tell us about what it is.
Well, OpenPath is doing well. We're connecting over 400 clients a month. We have a pretty busy office. We have 2 people who handle phones and emails all day long. And then we have our web guy, and then we have a program manager and myself. So we're all pretty busy with this work, and fortunately it's funded right now, which of course is a big issue for a lot of nonprofit organizations. So in looking towards making this a sustainable program well into the future, we started looking at options for how we might bring in additional revenue that we could then invest back into OpenPath. So one thing that's happened throughout the years, so sometimes we have therapists who say, I've been with you for 6 months and I haven't gotten a single referral. And when that happens, we try to work with the therapist and look at their profiles and try to figure out, what's going on and diagnose why they're not getting referrals. Often, though, you can imagine, since we're connecting over 400 clients a month, we have a lot of therapists getting a lot of action from us, getting a lot of calls and a lot of emails. So many of those therapists over the years have said, hey, you're doing such a great job of sending us low-fee clients. Can you also send us full-fee clients? So the more we kicked it around, the more we realized there might be an opening there for sending therapists full-fee and insurance-based clients. Now, unlike OpenPath, we're not inventing something new here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are many organizations already doing this, and some of them are doing it well. But what we thought we could do was we could change up the model of what's being done, maybe get a little bit more creative, and maybe help therapists a little bit more in the process. So that's what we've tried to do by creating this directory listing service for therapists called Being Seen.
Okay, so it offers more support, and it looks like it's very modern. Like, I can't help but compare a directory to Psychology Today, and it looks like it's very, maybe compared to Psychology Today, it's very user-friendly and modern. And what else is different about it?
Yeah, so our designer is really, really wonderful. We've been working with him for years now, and he does a great job. He has a great, great vision, and he's a real artist. And creating a modern, really good-looking website was important to us because for so many people, this is their calling card in a way. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to give people a site that looked really good. So that's one difference, I would say. We also offer incentives to Being Seen therapists to join. One of those incentives is a lifetime discount to the Zur Institute off their CE courses. They get a 20% discount. And then we also have an online educational platform through OpenPath where we have online wellness classes that are designed for clients. It's classes like anger management, relationship skills, meditation, anxiety and stress reduction. They're really fun, they're really interesting, they're really engaging. So all of our Being Seen therapists have access to these classes, which then they can give a code to their clients. And that we offer that free of charge. Additionally, we offer training videos from psychotherapy.net from people like Sue Johnson and Irvin Yalom. Every month we offer a different video. So we have a lot of different incentives that we're putting out there for people to join. Additionally, because the larger companies, or the large company that you mentioned, has become pretty saturated, especially in larger cities. It's pretty easy to never, ever have your profile be seen. So what we're doing with Being Seen is we're capping our limit of therapists. And the way we're doing that is we're doing it by population size, so that it's based on it's 0.01% of the population size, which means that in a city like Asheville, where we have 85,000 people, we'll only let 85 therapists into being seen. So this guarantees that one's profile is going to come up in the first couple pages. In a big city like New York, or San Francisco or Miami, we'll only let a maximum of 300 therapists in, so that we really want to make sure that no one's profile is getting buried back on page 20. It just doesn't make sense from my perspective to pay a lot of money every month to do that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because I live in San Francisco. I mean, I know 300 therapists. So yeah, that's great.
Other incentives, we have people out there like yourself who know a lot about building private practices and helping therapists out. And we have a whole series of videos that help people learn how to create profiles and learn how to market their practice and learn how to embed video. So all of our therapists get access to those videos at no charge. And I don't want to sound too salesy with what I'm about to say, and I realize this might sound kind of salesy, but we wanted to really be transparent with what we're offering. So we're calling this a satisfaction guaranteed project. So if after a year, right before a year is up, somebody feels like they didn't really get their money's worth, they're welcome to write us an email and we'll send them their money back. No questions asked. That's
pretty cool. I haven't really heard of a directory doing that. That's awesome. So let's talk about your therapy practice for a minute. I'm really curious about, I'm kind of like you in that there was always this entrepreneurial bug, and I was always kind of looking at what kind of business I might build and who it might serve. So I'm really curious about how it all fits together for you. In your therapy practice at this point, how many clients do you like to see?
Well, Open Path has become perhaps much larger than I ever envisioned it would be. So over the course of the years, I've had to really reduce my practice. Right now, I see about 10 people a week, give or take. And I really like that number. I love being a therapist. I could not imagine not being a therapist. Seeing a lot of clients is not something that I ever really did love. And when I say a lot, I'm talking about, 25 or 30 or 35 clients a week. I always found that really challenging for my own psyche and spirit. 10 clients feels wonderful. And I do long-term work with people. So basically everyone in my practice at this point I've been seeing for at least a few years. And I'm sure you know what it's like when you've sat with somebody regularly for year after year. There's a real trust and a real affection that builds. And I have such reverence and high regard for this work and for the people that come in and sit with me that it really feels like a blessing to be able to do this work week after week, even on the hard days.
Yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, there's a lot of love that builds over that many years and just deep care. Yeah. And how do you set up your practice financially? What do you charge?
I charge people $600 an hour, and I'm just joking. So my hourly rate is $135, and I also take Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't fault anyone for not taking insurance, but I do feel in my own principles that it's important to at least work with one carrier for all those people out there that do have insurance and good insurance. So I take Blue Cross Blue Shield. So my practice is probably divided half insurance based and half hourly based, and I do have I've raised my rates throughout the years. So I think I started at $90 an hour. So I have clients who are sort of all over the board between 90 and 135.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I have my open path slots.
Right, of course. And have you, in the beginning of your private practice, or even with Open Path, have there ever been any low or scary business moments? Like times where you were worried, I don't think this is working out, or I'm worried this isn't going to work out?
Open Path, a year after we launched, we had enough therapists, but we certainly weren't attracting many clients. And I had been working as a volunteer for Open Path, really logging 60, 70-hour weeks for well over a year at that point. And
That's
I was
intense.
thinking,
Wow.
yeah, really intense. And I was the only one doing it. So, my son was really young then. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. and trying to do 2 solid hours before he woke up. And it was a lot of work. And I think most startups, that's the story, right? You're working around the clock trying to get it off the ground. And after a year, I got to a point where I started really considering junking it for parts, because it felt like there was some momentum, but not a whole lot. And I could only work as a volunteer for so long before I felt like I needed to make a salary, and I didn't see any daylight. And something happened. It was the summer of 2014, and something really shifted, I think, in my mindset, where I really decided to make a go of it, and I hired some people to consult with me and to help raise funds. And next thing I knew, a local organization in Nashville gave us $20,000, and then we put a phone number up on the website and hired somebody to take calls. And I think that instilled a lot of confidence in the people that were landing on our site. And little by little, we made these changes, and momentum started picking up, and here we are.
Yeah, momentum. It seems like that's such an important word for what you just described. Like something shifted for you, and then you created all this momentum, got help, really shifted the things that had to shift.
Yeah, it's interesting. Momentum, as like this energy that kind of sweeps through, it can be really, really wonderful, and it can be really, really daunting and mysterious. And there are times when I've gotten on that wave and really rode it, and other times when the wave kind of rode me. And I've been overwhelmed at times with Open Path, because it did grow very, very quickly after that summer of 2014. But luckily now, I have a wonderful staff, and people who are really, really smart and really, really compassionate, and we're steering it, and it feels pretty manageable at this point.
So you got over that wave.
Pretty much. And now, the wave can be self-inflicted.
Yes.
I have to be careful with how much I invite in.
How do you now balance the roles of CEO and clinician and all of the different roles in your different organizations?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will get back to you as soon as I figure it out.
Yeah.
I think that, obviously the nonprofit it really took center stage in this way that I wasn't expecting. And so I have reduced my practice. Like I said, I hold my clients in such high regard that I've made very, very careful plans not to take that work for granted, or to push them to the side in some way. So, I try to see 2 clients a day, sometimes 3, and then or less. Sometimes I won't see any, or sometimes I'll just have 1. So I spread it out during the week, and then I make sure that I have plenty of time for the nonprofit, and then also plenty of time to get outside and walk around and look at trees, because without that, I don't know where I'd be. It'd be too much.
And do you live somewhere that you can access nature pretty easily?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, we're in Asheville, North Carolina. We're in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, and it is quite stunning here, even in the middle of the city. So getting outside and going for walks is really easy and more nourishing than I could ever hope for.
When you do that, I'm so curious about how people restore themselves. When you do that, do you do that with quiet, or do you listen to anything when you're doing that?
Sort of depends. Sometimes, I think more in the winter, I listen to music, or I'll listen to books when I get outside. But certainly in this weather, like the weather we're having now, I like to go outside. If I'm really going outside, not for exercise, but to do something really restorative that isn't exercise based, I try to be really intentional. I try to look at trees and look at flowers and touch trees. Really, for me, when it comes to resetting my nervous system, that's the thing that works best. And when I don't do that, I notice it.
That's so wise. I find that it's sometimes hard when I'm in that momentum space. It's hard to remember to leave my headphones at home, be quiet, when I'm walking and not take in more because there's so much that's interesting to me to take in, but it always pays off.
Yeah, I don't want to make it seem like I'm, some contemplative monk out there embracing all the trees, because while that's my intention often, I also have my phone in my pocket a lot of the times, and I have to deal with all those temptations about leaving the gadget out of my experience, and it's not always easy.
Absolutely. Do you have any tips about, or things that just work for you about setting goals and planning?
I'm laughing because I'm not the best goal setter in the world. I think this might be where my Buddhist training comes into play, and not that the Buddhists are against setting goals. But so often the way that I work is I really work with whatever is happening in the moment with an eye towards the future. But somebody once told me that planning is perfect, but plans are useless. And that makes a lot of sense for me in my experience. So I try to think about the future in terms of planning, but what that looks like is preparing my mind in the present for what might come around the corner. But obviously, it's who knows what's going to happen to any of us.
Absolutely, that's interesting. When I'm working with people, when I'm working with therapists on helping them set goals, often people will worry, like, how do I know if this goal that I'm trying to work towards is the right one? And I kind of emphasize it's probably not. And that's okay. Like, we can pivot. We just have to be in motion.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. I think that opening up from a place of curiosity and openness is really how I orient around planning for the future. And sometimes, it lands me in trouble and I have to pivot.
Yeah.
But I feel like more often than not, it works out.
Will you join me for a listener question?
Oh, sure.
Listener question.
Great. So Bianca, a wonderful therapist, asks, where did the idea that you cannot make money in this career start? Why does it still continue today? What's your take on that?
That's a good question from Bianca, and I actually don't know. If I had to throw out an answer, I think something happened in the 80s and 90s where more and more of us decided to become therapists, and graduate training programs made that more and more possible. And suddenly we all had to start marketing in ways that therapists before that, I think, really didn't. As I understand it, it was sort of frowned upon back then. What I know is that oftentimes marketers really prey on our insecurity, and they want us to feel insecure, and they want us to come from a place of fear. So I have a feeling that has, at least to some degree, infected our field and infected our collective scarcity mentality around whether or not we're able to do this work.
That's great. The other thing that I think of, and partly my sister's a kindergarten teacher, so she has, she's in a field that suffers from this at least as much as ours. But I think like this is a field that at least at this point has a lot of women in it, and a lot of times women's work gets undervalued. And then the other part is I think that we let it happen. Like it's this thing where we don't pass down expectations to newer people in the field that they can, create the wealth that they need. And then we tend to believe this dichotomy that we're either going to be helping or we're going to be earning money. So I don't know, Bianca, where this started. I love Paul's ideas about that, but I do think we can shift it. I think we can stop having that dichotomy.
Yeah, and I don't want to put too much on you here, Annie, but one thing that I really appreciate about what people like yourself are doing, and this whole sort of team of practice consultants that have really come to the foreground in the last few years, is that you all are acting as elders in this way, where there weren't people teaching us how to do this. And I think throughout the course of human history, that's how we've learned, right? We've learned from people who have done it before us, and they've taught it, and then we've taught people who come after us. And I think for this whole generation, there really weren't elders who were teaching us this. And now all of a sudden, y'all are out there doing this work. So it's very, very valuable.
Wow. Thank you. So, Paul, what's the best place for people to find you and throw compliments at you?
I don't think I want to answer that. I don't want compliments, but if people have questions or want to know more about what we're doing with OpenPath or being seen, my email's on OpenPath's website, and you can find that at openpathcollective.org.
Okay, great. And I'm going to have in the show notes how they can learn more about both organizations.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Annie. This was a real pleasure.
Today's Snark Moment.
Snark Moment
is about the fact that therapists don't realize how much time and effort it takes to write great copy for your website. When you're getting ready to create a new website, you've got to know that the part that's going to take the most time and energy is the writing. Creating a great home page and a great About Me page, and then some really good specialty pages, it takes hours and hours. You need to set that time aside, and it is something that you can hire someone else to do for you, but to have it done really, really well, it's going to cost quite a bit of money. So knowing that may actually help you realize how valuable your own writing is. So take a deep breath, carve some time out in your calendar, get some help if you need to, and write some amazing copy. Thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. Do you already know about the Superpower Method for therapists? It's a method I created to help you build the therapy practice only you can create. Learn about it at coachingwithannie.com. Not being seen, for OpenPath. And then let me start again.